This video is educational. If you're experiencing significant distress around money, consider speaking with a licensed financial therapist or mental health professional. You've read the books, you know the frameworks. You understand compound interest, emergency funds, and dollar cost averaging, and you still can't make yourself do it. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, because somewhere between the knowledge and the action, there is a wall, and that wall is not made of information. It's made of experience. Specifically, experience is your nervous system encoded about money before you were old enough to choose a 401k. That's money trauma, and diagnosing it precisely is the only way to get past it. In 2015, behavioral economist Shlomo Benartzi at UCLA reviewed decades of financial literacy interventions programs designed to teach people how money works. His finding, financial literacy education explains just 0.1% of the variance in financial behavior, 0.1%. That means 99.9% of the reason people behave the way they do with money is driven by something other than what they know. The research points consistently in one direction. Early emotional experience with money shapes financial behavior more powerfully than financial knowledge does. That emotional experience, when it involves threat, instability, or loss, is what clinical researchers now call financial trauma. And you cannot budget your way out of a trauma response. Money trauma is not simply having had a hard financial experience. It is the encoding of that experience as a threat signal in the body's autonomic nervous system. Trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk at Boston University spent decades documenting how threatening experiences become lodged in the body as automatic physiological responses, elevated heart rate, muscle tension, cortisol release that activate when related stimuli reappear. His framework, developed across multiple decades of clinical work, established that trauma is not primarily a memory. It is a conditioned nervous system response. In a financial context, this means the following. If you grew up in a household where money meant conflict, the arrival of a bill, a salary negotiation, or an investment decision doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It activates the same threat architecture your nervous system built as a child, before your prefrontal cortex was fully developed, before you had language for what was happening, before you could distinguish between my parents are fighting about money and money is dangerous. In 2012, clinical psychologist Galen Buckwalter published research identifying what he termed financial PTSD, a cluster of trauma symptoms, including hypervigilance, avoidance, and intrusive thoughts, specifically triggered by financial stimuli. His survey of 1,000 Americans found that 23% met clinical diagnostic criteria for financial PTSD, not financial stress, not financial anxiety. A clinical trauma response to money. That number almost certainly represents the floor, not the ceiling. Because most people reporting financial stress have never had their symptoms mapped against trauma criteria. The most clinically useful framework for diagnosing money trauma comes from financial psychologist Brad Klontz and his colleagues at Kansas State University. In 2011, Klontz and Britt published research identifying for core money scripts, unconscious, internalized beliefs about money typically formed in childhood and largely invisible to the adult who holds them. Money scripts are not values you chose. They are conclusions your developing brain drew from watching the adults around you. They operate beneath the level of conscious reasoning. And they drive financial behavior far more reliably than any budgeting system you've tried. Script 1, money avoidance. Core belief, money is bad, corrupt, or dangerous. Rich people are greedy, wanting money is shameful. Behavioral signature, self-sabotage near financial success, unconscious spending to prevent wealth accumulation, avoidance of financial accounts and statements. Klontz found this script disproportionately in people who grew up observing wealth as a source of conflict or moral failure. Script 2, money worship. Core belief, more money will solve every problem. Behavioral signature, chronic overwork, inability to enjoy current resources, persistent financial dissatisfaction regardless of income level. This script generates the hedonic treadmill in its most exhausting form. The goal is always slightly ahead. The arrival never comes. Script 3, money status. Core belief, net worth equals self-worth. Behavioral signature, spending to signal financial position, lifestyle, inflation regardless of savings capacity, deep shame around financial setbacks, shame, not disappointment. Klontz found a significant correlation between this script and high consumer debt among middle and upper middle income earners. Script 4. Money vigilance. Core belief: money must always be guarded, hoarding is safety. Behavioral signature: difficulty spending even on necessities, anxiety when account balances drop below a threshold, any threshold, secretiveness about finances, inability to enjoy present resources. Here's the diagnostic precision that Clance's research added. None of these scripts are wrong, exactly. Each one was adaptive in the environment where it formed. If you grew up in genuine scarcity, money vigilance kept the lights on. If you grew up watching wealth destroy family relationships, money avoidance was a coherent moral conclusion. The script was the right answer to the wrong question, a question your childhood environment was asking that your adult financial environment is not. The script persisted. The environment changed. That gap is where financial dysfunction lives. Here's the mechanism that makes money trauma so difficult to override with information alone. Traumatic encoding, the process by which threatening experiences become automatic nervous system responses, operates primarily in the brain's limbic system. Specifically, the amygdala and hippocampus. These regions encode emotional memory. They do not communicate directly with the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for rational planning, delayed gratification, and abstract financial modeling. What this means practically: when a financial stimulus triggers a trauma response, the brain's threat system activates faster than the planning system can intervene. The response happens before you've decided to have it. In 2019, researchers at the University of Michigan found that financial threat stimuli in people with high financial stress histories produce physiological stress responses, elevated cortisol, increased heart rate, even when the financial information presented was neutral. The stimulus was a bank statement. The response was threat activation. Not because the statement contained bad news. Because bank statements had previously reliably contained bad news, the nervous system learned to preload the threat response. This is called conditioned financial avoidance. And it explains why people earning comfortable incomes still cannot open their bank apps, still cannot make themselves contribute to their retirement account, still feel a specific bodily dread when money conversations begin. The dread is real. The threat is historical. And your nervous system cannot tell the difference between the past and the present without deliberate, practiced intervention. Here's what nobody gives you in financial content: an actual diagnostic framework. For questions, answer each one with a specific memory, not a general feeling. Question 1. What is your earliest memory of money being a source of stress? Not "we didn't have much money." A specific scene. Who was present? What happened? What you concluded from it. That conclusion is the seed of at least one money script. Question 2. What financial behavior do you repeat that you've explicitly decided to stop and cannot? Not behaviors you haven't tried to change. Behaviors you have tried to change and failed. Repeat failure against conscious intention is the behavioral signature of a trauma loop. Question 3. What does having a lot of money mean about a person? Don't answer with your intellectual belief. Answer with the first sentence that arrives before you edit it. That first sentence is your money script speaking. It was formed before your intellectual beliefs existed. Question 4. What does your body do when you think about your current financial situation? Not what you think. What your body does. Shoulders tighten, breath shortens, stomach drops, hands go cold. If your body has a response to a thought, that response is not anxiety. It is a stored physiological state, and it will drive behavior until it's addressed at the body level, not just the cognitive one. These 4 questions will not resolve your money trauma, but they will locate it precisely, and you cannot treat what you haven't diagnosed. Let's be precise about something that financial content rarely is. Money trauma is not uniformly distributed. The ACE studies, Adverse Childhood Experiences, conducted by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente beginning in the 1990s, represent the largest investigation of childhood trauma in medical history. Researchers Vincent Felitti and Robert Anda tracked over 17,000 participants and found that childhood exposure to economic instability was among the highest scoring ACE categories for long-term health, cognitive, and behavioral consequences. Here's what that means in financial terms. Children who grew up in households with chronic financial instability, defined as food insecurity, housing instability, or parental unemployment, showed measurably altered cortisol regulation, executive function, and impulse control in adulthood. These are the biological tools required for long-term financial planning. The households most likely to produce financially traumatized children are also the households with the fewest resources to buffer or treat that trauma. The trauma compounds, the resources don't. In 2020, economist Fanaba Addo at the University of North Carolina published research on racialized wealth gaps and stress physiology. Her finding: Black Americans show significantly elevated cortisol responses to financial stressors compared to white Americans with equivalent incomes, a pattern consistent with chronic threat exposure producing sensitized physiological stress responses. The racial wealth gap is not just an income gap. It is a trauma gap, encoded biologically, that affects the cognitive capacity available for wealth-building decisions. Financial literacy programs do not address this. Financial advice does not address this. Budget apps do not address this. This is why personal finance content that presents money management as a pure information problem is not just incomplete. It is, for a significant portion of its audience, actively misleading. The tools exist, the access to those tools is not evenly distributed. And understanding that structural reality is the prerequisite for building honest, effective financial systems at the personal level and at the policy level. 3 interventions. Each is drawn from clinical research. Each addresses a specific layer of financial trauma. None of them is a budget. First, somatic interrupt before financial decisions. Because trauma encodes in the body, body-level intervention precedes cognitive intervention. Before any significant financial decision, opening a statement, negotiating a salary, reviewing your accounts, spend 90 seconds in deliberate physiological regulation. Slow exhale, longer than your inhale. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch that downregulates threat activation. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman at Stanford has documented that a double inhale through the nose followed by a long, slow exhale through the mouth produces the fastest reduction in physiological arousal of any breath work technique. This is not meditation, it's nervous system priming. You are creating a 90-second gap between the financial stimulus and the trauma response, enough space for your prefrontal cortex to engage before your amygdala has already decided. Second, script exposure, graduated and witnessed. Clantz's clinical work found that money scripts lose their automatic behavioral power when they are named, externalized, and spoken aloud to another person. Not analyzed, not argued with, witnessed. Find one person, a trusted friend, a therapist, a financial therapist, and read them your answers to the 4 diagnostic questions. The act of witnessing breaks the secrecy structure that money scripts rely on to remain operative. Shame-based financial beliefs survive in silence. They lose authority when spoken without judgment. If no person is available, write the script out longhand. The externalization alone produces immeasurable cognitive distancing. You move from "I believe money is dangerous" to "I notice a belief that money is dangerous." That grammatical shift is not semantic. It is the clinical beginning of diffusion. Third, consult a financial therapist, not a financial advisor. Financial advisors are trained to optimize portfolios. Financial therapists are trained at the intersection of psychology and finance to address the behavioral and emotional patterns that prevent financial plans from executing. The Financial Therapy Association certifies practitioners in this specific discipline. Most sessions are comparable in cost to standard therapy rates. If the wall between your financial knowledge and your financial behavior has persisted despite multiple attempts to breach it with information, you are not dealing with an information problem. You are dealing with a therapeutic one, and it deserves a therapeutic response. Your financial behavior is not a character assessment, it is a nervous system map of every money experience your brain decided was worth remembering as a threat. You can redraw the map, but you need the right tools. If this changed how you think about money and psychology, subscribe. Every week on this channel, we go deeper into the psychology behind every financial decision you make.